Over the past few years, the internet has changed drastically. Many major platforms now host and sometimes promote certain types of content, such as X, formerly Twitter, which has seen an increase in pro-white narratives. Additionally, platforms like Instagram have allowed some alt-right figures to express their views, sometimes using controversial language or slurs. This has contributed to a shift in culture around identity politics, particularly on the political right. However, there is much to debate about how effectively present and promote identity politics to the broader public in a way that resonates and fosters understanding. Many of the new right, now consisting of Nick Fuentes, Myron Gaines and Kanye West, consisting of being very pro-Hitler, which is ironic since Hitler was not pro-brown people necessarily, but this has allowed these people to vent it, but in a way to gain an audience off of being controversial rather than pro their own people. So have identity politics lost its meaning, or will it evolve into something that could fix the problems within the UK? As I mentioned in many of my videos, the internet is now evolving rapidly with the rise of AI. We're seeing AI-generated edits and content predominantly on platforms like X, formerly Twitter, and Instagram, especially since Mark Zuckerberg allowed such content. Additionally, Musk's acquisition of Twitter has enabled people to be more critical of the government and certain groups online. I believe that these platforms may have different motivations for permitting this content, perhaps to train large language models to target individuals with specific beliefs online. Furthermore, there has been an increase in pro-white and pro-British/English sentiments online. I think the rise of identity politics has played a significant role in awakening many to the issues like mass immigration, the Jewish question, and the ability for people to create their own media without the fear of being banned, as was common before. Musk's embrace of certain nationalist sentiments, exemplified during a speech where he saluted with a gesture associated with white nationalism, has also influenced the landscape. While this has led to some backlash, such as leftists attacking Tesla service centres, it also demonstrates Musk's opportunism. Unfortunately, the environment has allowed grifters within these circles to thrive rather than focus on achieving meaningful political change or policy reform within the UK. This raises the question, where should people stand on identity politics? Should it be focused on for the masses, or remain niche to grow effectively? I've noticed many of Steve Law's supporters on X targeting the Homeland Party account post and comments engaging in trolling and toxic behaviour since their departure from the Homeland Party, where they were labelled soft or civic nationalists within these political circles. There's a prevalent belief among that white identity politics outweighs loyalty to Britain or England, often expressed through the sentiment that anyone can be English nowadays. In these circles, civic nationalists tend to use English or British symbols superficially, such as during recent protests in London, where crowds gather but seem to be more driven by confusion or low awareness. Among these protests, there were black and brown individuals who showed up, like the black man wearing the Union Jack suit, whom I believe was in association with Reform or UKIP. However, I disagree with the idea that these individuals are claiming to be English solely because they wear British symbols. If you look at the crowds, it's mostly comprised of white people who appear confused or uninformed about why they're actually protesting for. Many are simply there out of confusion, and once the protest ends, they often head home, not understanding the purpose of why they attended. They tend to return for another round of pointless demonstrations each month, often involving figures like Tommy Robinson, whose presence and tactics can give a bad reputation to the native population, like assaulting either police or members of the public. My point is that there are many of these protesters are perhaps similar to the Indian or African communities. They're just mimicking the white participants. Most black British individuals, according to a recent survey, identify more with being African rather than being British or English. For instance, a 2018 YouGov poll found that a significant portion of black Britons identify primarily with their African heritage, with only a minority identifying strongly as English or British. The minorities who do identify as British or English tend to do so within their own communities. Regarding black or brown patriots, they often experience cognitive dissonance, but I believe it's unwise to focus on them too much, as they do not represent the majority of black people in Britain. Similarly, Asian communities, such as Indians or Pakistanis, who comment on identity politics usually see themselves primarily through religious or cultural identities like Muslim or Sikh first. For example, when Kenny said he wouldn't deport someone's Portuguese wife because they were married to a British person, Steve reacted strongly, without realising that a pro-family stance suggests keeping families together. Breaking up families only provides the mainstream media and the left with ammunition to criticise us in the future. This is similar to Trump's deportation policies, which initially deported fewer people than Biden's administration did. Breaking up families is unnecessary since they would automatically leave, as Steve said, via remigration. You cannot simply sell white identity politics to members of the public, since no one really cares about white identity politics and does not resonate with them that much, which is what Steve Laws and Zoomer historian are failing to see. Oh, but I hear, if it's not about the white people, then it's pointless since it's not identifying the native population. It's a SIFNAT take on immigration. I think Nick Griffin from BNP once said about the Celts and how they just happen to be white, referencing our history when asked about who is British by a journalist. White skin is an evolutionary trait. Sure, it makes us unique, but there's more to being British or English than just being white. White nationalism is demeaning since it limits people to having white skin as British or English. Is some albino African who's white, even though he clearly looks like a Bantu, just because he has white skin? I think not. I think a few years ago I would agree it would matter, but in order to sell your politics, you cannot simply limit it to something very niche. Obviously, you cannot change your ethnicity. However, you could change your religion at any time, from Christianity to Islam, from Hinduism to Sikhism, but you would also still be white or Asian, etc. A movement has to be more about than just religion, as I've seen people claim it's mainly a religious problem, since it's not like it would stop some dysgenic Bantu or Arab from graping in the local area due to bad genes. But some would say it's them being a bad Christian, supposedly. Christian immigration is a scam. It does not stop having some low impulse control third worlder with an IQ of 80 from being harmful to society just because Christianity gave him morals all of a sudden. The Congo is 95% Christian, yet it has the highest grape capital in Africa, which just says it all, and it's clearly not a religious problem there. Nationalism is not just about skin colour. It can be a versatile tool to speak to people who want to make a change or be able to support their own communities, or already do. Hence why the Homeland Party are focusing on community politics instead of main institutions that have failed us time and time again. I think this stems off some anxiety we all have about being replaced in our own country, which is happening right now. We have to be able to advance in our politics to potentially get elected to show we can do our job. There is no need to be desperate in these times, but we need to stick together and not focus on infighting. Even with something like reform, I tend to stay away from being overly critical and just get on with what I'm doing now, since we don't have time to be petty or argue. Civic nationalism is a term and a myth. You're either an ethno-nationalist or you're not. In America, they do not identify themselves as being British, even though their ancestors came from us. They identify as white European because of how diverse America is, even with minorities. So it's more of an American thing than a British or English terminology. The Liberals went and added the whole black-white on the census sheet in order to include more people than it being a European or African identity. Then this stems down to black or brown Hitlerites that use dogma in order to criticise Jewish institutions and culture. But again, as I said before, historical context, Hitler was, and for the last time, not pro-black, brown, Muslim, African, Mexican, etc. Period. Historically context, Hitler was racist, but in a sense he mainly targeted Jewish or Gypsy heritage, some Slavic populations as well, Polish, rather than Africa or Arab heritage. Even with National Socialist volunteer groups within India and some Arab countries, it does not mean Hitler AI translated speeches, making songs about Hitler and praising Hitler's ideas means you are spiritually Aryan or white or whatever that is. Nick Fuentes quoting Hitler all the time, and Myron Gaines listening to his speech. It gets really annoying that these people use it to try and be pro their own group or to anger Jewish organisations in order to gain clout and be an edgelord on the internet. This, folks, is what we call the woke right wing, where it's all a joke of identity politics. When I mention identity politics, it has to be done professionally and in a manner in order to be taken seriously by normal people. These people take it as a joke and do nothing to just scream and shout like the low IQ monkeys they are. Kanye West meltdown over Jews, only to convert to Judaism again, but then praising Hitler. You can tell it's all a joke, and these people are, as I call, the new right, where it's just black, brown people laughing at something they're not. Sure, I like the jokes they make sometimes, and some are well spoken in their argument, but most of the time it irritates my brain. Like the points I made criticising Hitler rights or modern Nazi movements, it's been diluted by low IQ speaks like Going Defence League or Blood Tribe. This is why Nazi movements can never be truly pro-white, because they are either cannot simply get their ideas across to the people, then only appeal to other nationalists. When you can convert people to an ideology, if it's something the average Joe would be okay with associating. It's not about who joins either, since most Western countries have laws stopping you from allowing certain minorities or sexualities to join and would be illegal and land you a lawsuit. But as I made a point before, if something only appeals to British or English people via being pro both of these groups, only those people will join. And it's not like black, brown or yellow people will be flocking to join, since again it's not appealing to them. The people that do join, however, just happen to be white. Even if we had a 99% majority white state, we would still be doing things within our community, like creating jobs and maintaining areas, like something off of 28 years later. A nice white homogenous society with many things to do. Plus, these neo-Nazi groups tend to do stupid things like attack synagogues or something like Brenton Tarrant did that doesn't even benefit the movement, with just using violence, which gives enemies ammo against you. No one wants to associate with being a neo-Nazi or just being a white nationalist in these movements, because again, it's not something that is appealing. I should not have to tell you this twice or three times, but again, it's within these spaces of ethnicity, nationality, race, culture, history, etc. You have to be clear on what it is and what your policies are, or it gets diluted or forgotten within years since you remain too niche. It stunts your growth. You can even end up becoming a lolcow streaming, and yes, I already know that in the next few decades it will be even more crazier and even worse, but it will be regardless of what I or you do. So keep safe and carry on. So anyway, hopefully you enjoyed this video about me talking about identity politics and why it's important to not just have grassroots, but also be able to be more appealing to members of the public, and also not to appeal to other nationalist groups, and as well to do with why people within these spaces or the new right have turned it into a complete joke. And some comments I actually did want to make about to do with trans identity politics, because people would say identity politics is technically woke because of people using it in order to grift. I mean, I could have covered this in another video, but I'll just leave some final comments in the sense that when it comes down to identity politics, if you created a policy, for example, that is to do with homosexuals and transgenders, you want to make a separate policy. So for example, if you wanted to make a policy where people don't want to associate with it, I think it would be a lot more better. So that way, when it comes down to identity politics, and obviously to do with men who are dressed as women and actual women, a lot of people do actually get attacked for this. And especially when it comes down to someone like J.K. Rowling, who's had been very controversial, and even some of the Harry Potter cast have been saying that she's wrong in this sense. But I do think that when it comes down to identity politics, people should not be able to be afraid to express their opinion, and as well make sure that there should be some laws in place so people don't get lawsuit for having these opinions. And as well, if you want to click on these videos here where I've talked about other aspects of this, and as well, if you want to click on the link in the description below where I have links to my other channel and my Discord as well.